I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've both been skull and bone, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number 322.
I sad duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russert, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
What the fuck is up? Welcome to another installment of Are You Dead, our weekly call-in conspiracy variety show. Today we have Charlie Robinson with you. Obviously I have my co-host Austin with us as always. What the fuck is up, people? Let's get into it. Austin just dropped a dope-ass fucking Satanism episode as always.
Oh, rad.
That's where our head's been at lately.
Nice.
It's a pleasure to have Charlie with us.
No doubt.
Yeah, let's get into it. First off, I think a question we typically ask guests, what do you think of the intro? I think it's a fucking banger. Do you like it?
Oh, I do like it. Yeah.
Anything you want to nitpick in there? I did have someone that pointed out before, because I will say I don't know the story behind every single one of those. Like for one, God, who is it? The Tim Russert? That's probably the best one. Like I don't fucking know if he actually got killed by Satanists or by the Skull and Bones.
He probably did.
Later. Right, did, but I think it was like
Yeah.
years later after that statement. So that's a fair critique from someone.
Close enough.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm going to allow it.
Right.
I mean,
one of my favorite things about you, Charlie, by the way, I found you like, I don't know, it had to have been either through Sam or through, I can't remember now exactly where it was, but I know that I just like, I love the way that you write. And when I read The Octopus of Global Control, like you write with a sense of humor. And I just like, it makes it very easy and like enjoyable, you know?
well,
what I mean?
First of all, thank you for all the illiterates out there. The Octopus of Global Control is now available as an audiobook.
I heard about this.
With Graham from Grimerica doing the voiceover. So go get that wherever audiobooks are found so you can check that out. But yeah, that was on purpose, the humor for the book, and it's dark humor, of course. And I have probably a twisted sense of humor, but like you have to kind of laugh at the absurdity of it all. But also it's very disempowering too for the Empire when you can mock them and laugh at them. It does something to it. So it's something that they don't have a defense for. So if you can kind of laugh at the absurdity of it all, it'll allow you to sort of process what you're actually seeing. And what you're seeing is some really bad shit. You know, I mean, there's just really no easy way to deliver the news. But there are some ways that are better than others. And I have made all the mistakes that you make in trying to deliver that news and through trial and error and bringing up 9/11 at Thanksgiving dinner and watching the table turn on me. You know what I mean? Like in learning how to talk about these subjects. It came from me stepping on my dick over and over again and trying to have a conversation with someone that doesn't want to have a conversation with you. So you kind of learn how to deliver this news in a way that, like, the average person that is mildly interested in it can understand some component. You can connect it in a way to them that they go, oh, that makes sense to me.
Right.
And you don't have to be like a conspiracy. At that point, you don't have to be like a conspiracy theorist. You just have to have observation skills and ask, like, do you think that this is connected to this? And start that process. And so I found that humor works. I found that quotes work too. The format of the book with 700 quotes from 500 different people, that was hugely important because it took me out of the conversation. It's like, forget what I think about this stuff, right? Like, listen to them. Listen to Hillary fucking Clinton talk about this stuff. Read what Henry Kissinger wrote in this memo that he was certain you would never, ever see. Like, of course I'm in the book. Of course my shitty fucking attitude is in the book throughout the whole thing, of course. But like, some parts of it, it's like presented without an opinion. Like, here's David Rockefeller giving up the entire plan. And it's not even him getting caught on a hot mic by Luke Rudowski coming out of a restaurant or anything like that. He put it on page 405 of his autobiography, where he confesses to being part of a group that wants to build a world government. It's not us fucking tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists making this stuff up. They're writing books about it. So it's like, if you can show people this isn't conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy analysis. It's just it takes the mockery out of it.
Exactly.
Like, well, you come over here, dipshit, and you tell me these two things don't connect to one another. I mean, take a look at this stuff. What are you talking about? Like, let's get real here. And there's so many people that are just out there pretending like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. No, you fucking know that 9/11 didn't happen the way they said it happened. You've had 22 plus years to figure it out. What is your excuse? Like, I'm not willing to say, I'm not willing to accept, like, oh, I don't know. No, fucking no.
Right.
No, it's your job to know. You need to know what happened. You need to know what didn't happen. Because to live in a world where you don't understand what happened for real on 9/11, you're living in a parallel universe from the rest of us.
Right.
And that's why there's another huge like divide between society. There's just like a segment of society that is not living in reality. And it's like, and they're a protected class. You're not allowed to like say anything. You're not allowed to point out the fact that they're fucking insane. Right. And they believe absurdities. You're not allowed to say you're somehow like a bigot or a sexist or a homophobe or something. You're just like, what is going on? You know, so it's very, I tell you, man, I don't know about you guys, but it feels very disorienting to be living in a world where there's so much craziness going on, and yet you feel like you're punished for noticing it.
Right.
Like, and I mean, like, the fact that you notice it is like, how dare you? Like, that's somehow like offensive. It's like, no, like, I feel like the offensive thing is that all these absurdities are happening and that you're lying about it. That's what I find to be the most offensive thing, not my reaction to it. Like, it feels very like America's just bitched out.
Yeah.
You know, like, I hate to say it as an American. I'd love to say like, we stand like for sure. I know it. I don't feel that way. I feel like we have just like gone like fucking Biden administration just make us stop.
Diet Canada.
I entirely agree, but at the same time, I do believe that a lot of this falls under the consequences of the social engineering aspect of this the way this system has been structured, right? Where the Tavistock and, you know, I mean, Club of Rome, I mean, you Committee of 300, you read Limits to Growth, just like you're saying. I mean, they tell us what the plan is, right? And it's right in our faces. It's just, are you willing to look? You know, and I think we've been conditioned not to, right? in many ways. And I think,
yeah. And I think, I mean, even with like, the education system, I mean, you're taught like certain answer gets you the it's correct and another answer isn't. So they train you early on to not be inquisitive about these things. But like, I feel like we should all be asking a lot more questions. And I think that it's interesting that the default setting for most Americans is set to like, oh, I just by default trust my government. Like, why the fuck would you trust your government? Like by default, why would you trust really anybody by default, especially an important decision like that? Why don't you start by distrusting them and then making them earn your trust and see if you feel like you're in an abusive relationship with your government? Because I certainly do.
Right.
I don't feel like there's any trust, and they shouldn't trust me either because I certainly don't trust them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, are you an anti-government person? It's like, no, I'm just paying attention, and I'm just not gonna pretend like I don't notice what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. One thing I would like to ask you about is me and I think Austin have been kind of spiraling around like Satanism and type of content recently, and I don't know if I've really heard you speak too much on that. And I know you're one of the people. I'm sure you have, but I know you're one of the people that's a little bit more in this conspiracy space, a little bit less woo-woo than others. I don't know if you're religious or not.
No.
I know I'm not. I don't know if Austin is. I'm more like agnostic, atheist, whatever the fuck you want to give it. But I do think there is like this weird satanic component when you start to like look beyond the veil. And so it's kind of like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I do think there are people in seats of power that either believe in some sort of woo-woo Satanism stuff, or at the very least claim to in order to attain power. So I'm just kind of curious, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think there are like a legit like cult that kind of rules us, or where are you at with that?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not religious either, so I don't come at this from like a, I don't have any sort of entanglements as far as religion goes when I look at the Satanism stuff. It's just like as an observation, there's clearly a group of Satanists. Now, Satanism, Luciferianism, where that gray area is between the two, other people could probably speak to that better than I could. I'm not really sure the ins and outs of that.
Yeah.
But that is part of a deep, long, really fucked up, multi-generational, ritualistic type of thing that's been going on out of Europe for a long time. And that's very real. And when we're starting to talk about like, who's running things,
Moloch.
You're talking about groups out of like, you're talking about groups that are connected to the Vatican and intergenerational Italian banking families and Knights of Malta and Opus Dei and groups like this that have access to money in a way that it's kind of hard to quantify. You know what I mean? I mean, you've been running the best blackjack game in the world for thousands of years, the Catholic Church, right? You've got all the money at this point. I mean, unless you've squandered it. But so that's a real powerful group, right? And you could tell, you can almost sort of tell like if you hear about them on traditional or even maybe like what David Icke likes to call the mainstream alternative media. If you hear about these groups, they're probably not the ones in control. Like you mentioned the Committee of 300. Committee of 300 is most definitely a dangerous group, right?
Hell yeah.
Along with these other powerful groups. And listen, when you're talking about the Vatican and you're talking about secret societies and you're talking about power and you're talking about shit that gets passed down, you are talking about rituals. Undoubtedly, that is part of the culture, and it's part of the secret. It's part of what bonds them together. So do I think Luciferianism and Satanism is an actual thing? Yeah, 100%. I think that there's probably a segment of the group that are like posers, that are like wannabe, like, I'm just like kind of goth, like extreme goth or something, you know, or whatever. But like, I think that when you move up into like, I think you'd be surprised who really the high rollers are in that industry. They're probably more like people that are running banks than they are like people that are running mortuaries.
Right.
Yeah. Fair. I did have an audience, one of the members ask, what are your thoughts on the Pritzker family? Isn't that the big family Sam always tries to not address? Isn't that the one?
Does he try to not address them?
Isn't that the one he always brings up and is like?
I think there's a different.
I did a whole episode on
different one. I'm almost positive that I can't remember which one it is now. I'm gonna try and find it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't give a shit. Go ahead and bring it up on my channel. I can fucking grift off that one if they try to nuke me. I'm not as big as Sam, so
I did a macroaggressions episode on the Pritzker family about a year ago, and I don't remember exactly what the number was, but it's certainly there for people to find. Yeah, the situation with them was that this was like a multi-generational, tight-knit, Chicago-based Rockefeller-style family that had made a lot of money in like the early 1900s and kind of kept it and grew it and grew it and grew it and got into a big fight in like 91, I think. And the judge ordered this trust to be split 11 ways. Each member got like $2.2 billion and then went off to do different things. And part of that is like the Hyatt Hotel, and part of that is like Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, and part of that is like all kinds of crazy shit that they're into. But part of it is the trans agenda. And one of the Pritzkers was like a sergeant or so. I forget. I'm not sure the rank. High-ranking military person who transitioned and is now one of the largest financiers of the trans agenda. And they're billionaire Zionist, Chicago, Jewish mafia connected political family. Super fucking dangerous, for sure. Definitely running things in the state. J.B. Pritzker is the governor of the state.
Okay.
So
it was
like,
the Pastars was the family, I think, that I heard Sam mention multiple times. That
is that said, who
that was the one. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, the Pritzkers are American Chicago family that's into all kinds of stuff. And so, one of them I think like went off and like wanted to become like a yoga instructor, and everyone was like, they're like, see, this is what they were like fighting, because they were like, this person doesn't deserve the same share as me. I'm trying to grow the family business, and this person wants to go make pottery in Costa Rica. Like, why the fuck does she get half of, like the same amount that I get? And so that's what was pulling this family apart. It was over money and some of the entitlements and everything. And then anyway, so it's broken up into these different little cliques, but it's like breaking up Standard Oil, really. I mean, if you think about it, because they broke them up into all these little smaller groups that there's less accountability in some of them. Now each one can go do their own agenda. And for one of them, it's real heavy into the trans agenda.
Right.
Which I believe
financing hospitals, big time. That's a big thing. Is how can we support the trans agenda? Well, you can support the hospitals that will do the surgeries, and that's what they.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the Tavistock too was big into supporting the fucking trans agenda shit too. I know. I believe William Ramsey's covered this a lot. There was I'm going
to be talking to him tomorrow.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
But there was you can ask him about this. There was a recent, fairly recent, I guess some people are kind of connecting this, William sort of himself as well, to the smiley face killings type stuff. It seems like there was one, it almost seems like an unsuccessful smiley face killing. Some troon fucking killed some dude. And it looked like they were trying to do a similar type methodology, kind of failed. But they ended up killing him. But there also was like a backdrop with this person of like a whole like there was weird like trans Nazi stuff going on. There was also weird like sex stuff with like, you know, killing things and stuff like that. Like this was one of the people who I know there was I think it was a Netflix documentary a while back where it was like something to do with like cats or people hurting cats or some shit.
Right.
It was, like,
Oh
hunting
yeah.
Yeah. And this is one of the people who did some shit like that. Literally put like a cat in a fucking blender, like their neighbor's cat, and did some other shit where I think they literally like cut open a cat and pulled out its heart while it was still like alive, and like doing this for their troon friend over in the States that they were trying to like, because this happened in London, I think, or England or wherever the fuck. And then they were trying to like essentially be like, this is hot, right? To their fucking like their troon like romance over in the States. And that's actually how that this person ended up getting busted, I think, was because the person over the States ratted him out. But it was very there was a direct connection where this person was, I think, like there was some Tavistock type institution where they went to go do that. And I know William did a good deep dive into this Tavistock place, and it was super irresponsible. There literally was like leaks of stuff where the doctors were saying like, oh, we're not going to tell these people. They were essentially intentionally not giving these people informed consent to let them know that like, hey, yeah, you're going to lose your dick, dude. Like, this isn't going to like work out like you think it is, kind of stuff. Like, you might be a little bit depressed after this. like that kind of shit.
Well, we couldn't tell you, or else you'd never take it. So we
right. Yeah, you're not going to magically.
Yeah, they're the worst. That's part of this. It's, you know, social engineering is you try to make the public feel a certain way about things, and you'd be surprised how effective it is. Mm-hmm. You know, how you don't have to get everybody to think a certain way. You just have to get enough until you start hearing about it over and over again. And then the power of like repetition and marketing takes over. Next thing you know, everybody's trans.
Right.
You know?
Trust the science. You'll be fine. Your neo-vagina will work just fine.
Yeah. Science.
You won't be bummed out at all. No, you'll be cool.
No, this is totally normal. We've always had neo-vaginas, don't you know?
Yeah, just a switch. They'll be just like you have a cooter, just like any old chick. It'll work just fine.
It's fine.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and it's also like a soft kill depopulation.
Eugenics, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt to me. I mean, and I think most people are entirely unaware of our country's past, and as far as eugenics is concerned, right? I mean, like the state of California in general was putting up big numbers, right? Like, and I mean, they essentially informed the eugenics policies of Nazi Germany in many ways, and I mean they even mentioned that at Nuremberg, if I recall. And
yes,
it's just like that is
they used case law. They used the California state case law as the justification for the sterilization programs by the Nazis.
That's so extraordinary.
100%, yeah. And they California was ahead of the curve. Yeah, the United States has a problem with eugenics. They call it something different because to call it the eugenics program would be crazy, right? So they call it Planned Parenthood. But that's the same. That's Margaret Sanger's company that the
Jaffe
started the American Eugenics Society, which isn't that anymore. Much like you then look into like there used to be a British Eugenics Society, but it was taking on it was getting a lot of bad reputation because of the eugenics part of it, right? So they changed Julian Huxley, who was Aldous Huxley's brother, who was the head of the British Eugenics Society. He said, we're having like a branding problem with this eugenics in our name, with all the murdering and shit.
All right.
So we're going to change. I'm going to make up a new name for eugenics. We're going to call it something totally different. It'll be like more futuristic. We're going to call it transhumanism.
There you go.
And that's when these lunatics like Harari at the World Economic Forum start talking about a fourth industrial revolution. You go, well, what is that? And they say it's transhumanism. And everyone goes, oh, that sounds so great. And you go, that's eugenics. That's what transhumanism is. Not my words. Again, their words. They're the ones that made up the fucking word. I didn't make it up.
Right.
They made it up to use it as a euphemism, as a marketing ploy to distract from what they're really used to be called, which is eugenics, which is depopulation. That's what it is, no matter how you slice it.
Oh yeah,
that's what it is.
I mean, didn't Margaret Sanger herself I believe she even wrote in an article. I have the quote here. It's in my notes. Let me see. Yeah. And yeah. Okay. So she wrote this in an article. She said it was titled "A Better Race Through Birth Control." And she says,
I know where you're going with it. I'm pretty sure.
Given birth control, the unfit will voluntarily eliminate their kind. I mean, that's
up the Jews, down the blacks.
She also said that they needed to take care of the Negro problem.
Right? Oh yeah.
So
exactly.
she was out of her mind. Okay, this is a lady that was not well, right. But very well connected. And this is a policy that is shared among the elite. Is you poors are taking up too much space on our planet. And this whole world would work so much better if there were fewer of you. Yeah. And we're so magnanimous and we're so smart and we're willing to, we're so brave that we're willing to make the tough decisions about which ones of you we got to get rid of.
Right.
And that's how they frame it. And it's delusional insanity, of course. Malthusian, like lunatics getting together, fantasizing about murdering billions of people. But they talk about it. You know what I mean? Bill Gates talks about it. The reason why people like goof on him about all this stuff isn't because they just woke up one morning and decided to do it. He is on the record over and over and over again talking about depopulation. And since we mentioned Planned Parenthood, of course, his father was the head of was the board of supervisors, chairman of the board of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, he's balls deep involved with Epstein. I'm finishing. Actually, I just finished Whitney Webb's book. So, it is funny. We're talking eugenics, and Bill Gates is balls deep involved with Epstein. On the flip side, Epstein was doing his little fucking island experiments where he's fucking cream pieing all these bitches and creating little fucking homunculus over there. That way he can take over the world while
Zorro Ranch
on the flip side
in Zorro Ranch, while financing Martin Nowak at Harvard with $30 million for evolutionary game theory. And what that is that's run computer simulations to see what happens to the population if we add a variable like a virus.
Wow.
Oh, or a vaccine.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see how that tracks out. I will say one of the things I think at least I know you best for is probably the Boston bombing. So I'm just kind of curious your thoughts. That's all in the up and up, right?
That's one of my favorite chapters,
right?
Too.
There's nothing squirrely going on there.
Oh, nothing. Not at all. Never.
Maybe they just twisted a little bit of things here. Maybe embellished a few things along the edges.
Right. You don't believe Carlos Hernando's story, guys? Come on.
When they put one of the brothers on the cover of Rolling Stone, I was like, what more do you guys need to see the op in its full glory with the complying mainstream corporate whore media?
Right. I remember
I just was like,
I remember when I read your chapter in the Octopus on the bombing, and that was one of my favorite parts because the wheelchair parade, right? That was one of my favorite parts of the whole story. But honestly, I really do believe that the smoking gun was Uncle Russ. I mean, not even talking about Operation Urban Shield or and all of the other factors. I mean, Uncle Ruslan Tsarnaev is a smoking gun to me, right? I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Give me more info on this side of things.
So the parents, family, and friends of the Tsarnaevs, I mean, they were most of them all were maintaining their innocence. And I mean, even to this day, a lot of them, and I even heard one of their aunts that was like, I just believed her, and she was like, she was just very emotional, but she just said like, show me the footage, like, right. And she kept demanding to see the footage because she said that's the only way I'll believe that my boys did this. And let alone the visits by the feds that were happening and that were being conducted at the family's home and all of this. And Zubadet Tsarnaeva is the mother of the two brothers, and claimed she knew the FBI was monitoring them because they had visited her home at least 2 or 3 times leading up to the bombing, and had also been in touch with Tamerlane over the phone. And the dad, Ansor, he also said a year and a half ago, around 2011, they came to our home, 2 young people from Boston. They said they wanted to talk to my son. They came in, we sat down in the kitchen, them and us. They said, we're doing preventative work. We check out all the young people, they said, how they live, what they do, what intentions are for the future. They also said that here in Boston, we don't want our children to be blown up in the streets. That's their words. We want our children to be safe, they said. Ansor continued to repeat the claim that Tamerlane had called his mother a few days after the event and told her that a U.S. security agent had called him and said he was suspected of carrying out the bombing. And Uncle Russ is the only family member that comes out after the bombing talking shit about the boys and basically kind of like implicating them in a way and almost confirming their guilt, which I found strange, right? And so then I looked into it a little deeper, and Ruslan Tsarnaev was like deeply embedded with intelligence, and even lived at Graham Fuller, I believe, it lived in his home and married his daughter for a time, who when you get into that, it's like it's completely ridiculous as far as like the connections to the CIA that are traced directly to Uncle Ruslan. And so when I was watching all the statements of the family, man, I was completely like, I was just filled with doubt, like it, not in no way did I believe. And when I heard Russ speak as well and engage with the media, it was so clear that he was just disingenuous, at least in my opinion. And so during the manhunt, he, like the younger brother, Zahar, right? You remember, by the way, right after the bombing happened, he tweets and he goes, ain't no love in the heart of the city. Stay safe, people. Right. So I honestly think that's quote what he tweeted. And so but when you get into Ruslan's connections to Graham Fuller, it's completely, it gets entirely the whole story, it's blown out of the water, the official narrative. It's a complete facade. And I mean, I think William Engdahl did a really good job. He did a piece on, I think I found it on the Voltaire Network. And anyway, it was a 2013 article and the Voltaire Network is in Frankfurt, Germany, by the way. And so Ruslan changed his name after the bombing to Ruslan Tsarnaev, and he lives in a posh Washington, D.C. suburb of Bethesda, Maryland. And he has worked in the past for companies tied to Dick Cheney's Halliburton, as well as a consultant in Kazakhstan with the State Department's USAID, which has been identified as a CIA front company. And so in reality, the two brothers, Tamerlane Zahar Tsarnaev, accused of being responsible for the Boston bombing, had an uncle, right? The same uncle who agreed to bury the remains of the dead brother. This uncle was married to Graham Fuller, also known as the godfather of Al-Qaeda, one of the most important CIA architects of using Islamic jihadist terrorists against the USSR during and after the Cold War, all throughout Central Asia, including Chechnya and Kazakhstan. So I guess that's a coincidence, huh? You know what I'm saying?
Up family,
brother.
big time, man.
Has to be. And in April 2002, the Tsarnaev parents and Zahar went to the U.S. on a 90-day tourist visa and applied for asylum. And during that time, Tamerlane was left in the care of Uncle Ruslan in Kyrgyzstan and arrived in the U.S. around 2 years later. And he was telling his mom, he was telling her, like, he was very, like, emotionally upset, like, leading up to this time, telling her that he was losing all this. He couldn't account for loss in time that were happening. He was waking up in areas, didn't know how he got there. It was MK Ultra shit. It sounded exactly like Program to Kill. It sounded exactly like Sirhan, Manchurian Scenario. It was very interesting in my opinion. I think that right, like, so
it would be a great movie, you know. Except that it's a real thing that really does happen. And the MK Ultra stuff is, you know, it's 100% real.
No doubt.
Of course. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's 100% effective. You see it wearing off and scrambling some people, and other people needing a tune up every now and then. They got to grab Kanye off the street. Disappears with Harley Pasternak for a week and then comes back, and he's fine, but he doesn't want to talk about the Jews anymore for some reason. And you know, I mean, they have ways. Yeah.
Well, you look at Jonestown. I was just talking about this. I have an episode that'll drop here in a few days about the False Memory Foundation. And the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, and we were talking about Jonestown. I found it. We were kind of talking about the idea that, and I've talked about with this Austin. We have a Jonestown series, but they had the White Knights. The whole idea was like they were supposed to all kill each other, and obviously we had the penultimate moment where everyone died, and everyone thinks it was a suicide. But it looks like if you analyze the information a little bit more, it looks like most of them were probably killed, or even the ones that did kill themselves. It was probably very clearly some sort of coercion in the fact of, like, it wasn't like they did it of their own volition, really. So I do think there is something to that, in the idea that, like, I don't think MK Ultra necessarily works every single time or in the way they want to. It's more of like a kind of nudging around the edges the way you want to go, because it looks like, because the whole idea is they had been training for that for a long time, and the idea that, like, they were running these drills where, you know, Jim Jones would, like, you know, tell them, oh, drink this, and, like, they would, you know, and then be like, we're all going to die or whatever. And then essentially he was trying to condition them, and it still failed. Even in the end, it still failed. They still were like, fuck you, we're not doing this. A bunch of them had to be fucking murdered by their hit squads. So I do think there is something interesting to that, to where it's like, I don't think they have it perfected. So I think there's a little bit of a white pill in there that, like, you know, hey, I don't think they can perfectly pull it off, you know?
Yeah, mind control is a pain in the ass. I mean, they're getting better at it, of course, but and of course they just hide a lot of subliminal shit in television. And AI now with deep fakes, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So that'll add to the propaganda, I'm sure. Great. You know.
What are your thoughts on satanic hit squads? Like, have you read Program to Kill? Yeah. We in light of Austin's most recent episode, and I've kind of been onto this too. There's been some stuff I've researched before, because I do find it almost like a good. For one, there's multiple reasons to think maybe this is the case, but I also find it interesting, the component that if they were using satanic hit squads, it's like, let's say, for example, Terrence Yeeki, let's say they did fucking off him with let's say it was some crazy fucking satanic hit squad that did it. I'm not saying that is the case or isn't, but it's like, let's say that is information that got uncovered. Now, immediately you look fucking crazy. You're like, oh, you think it's a satanic cult that fucking killed them? Once again, not saying that's the case. I'm just using it as an example. But it's like, that becomes this, like, seeding of doubt, to where immediately people are like, no, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about? That's like beyond the pale. But it's like, if that is the case, it's like this, it's like almost like the more ridiculous you make it, the less likely it is for people to buy into it being the case.
Tell the big lie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you really dug into that at all? Have you really
No.
looked into? No. Okay, you haven't gone down that angle.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I'm fascinated with control structures, whether it's mind control or blackmail control, or So it definitely does sound like something I would be into.
Yeah,
but I haven't gone down that.
You'll have to check out Program to Kill. That's like the book for
I've
it.
heard
And once
of
you
it.
read that, you're like, what the fuck? And then you're
Dude,
like, oh
it's
shit.
crazy.
A lot of stuff starts to click. You're like, oh shit. Then you start to get into like the process church and stuff like that. I don't know if Austin, you have any thoughts. I know you've been digging into that like crazy.
My God,
so
brother.
yeah.
Well, no, I 100% believe that that one, I think that there's definitely a natural occurring aspect of some of these cult organizations that aren't entirely tied to some sort of Gladio network that so don't get me wrong, don't misinterpret what I'm saying, but I will say that I do believe that there are clear connections that we can point to and compelling evidence that honestly paints a picture of a well-established underground network that has been really, it's evolved over time. There have been, infighting, various, offsets of the groups that have, had differences in opinion as far as their interpretation of philosophy or whatever the case may be. But so much of it seems to have many overlapping characters, and so much of it seems to tie into this political landscape of the time, because you see these elite establishment prominent politicians, judges, and they're all, many of them are implicated in these sexual blackmail operations that then tie back into some sort of human trafficking operation, child sex trafficking operation, whatever the case is. And that seems to inherently tie in with this underground occult network that I'm mentioning, that much of the cults, they do have like their foundation. It very much is like the son of an MI6 agent, an MI5 agent at the time, or an operative at the time, or I mean, for example, like with the Process Church of the Final Judgment, I mean, you had Tommy Baumler, who's he's like a hypnotist and a bishop for the American Orthodox Catholic Church, and he worked out of Guy Bannister's office leading up to the JFK assassination, and he happened to be the individual who incorporated the Process Church of the Final Judgment and even gave it its name, right? And incorporated it in Louisiana, and there are deep ties to he's tied in with David Ferry in that clique because he was, so like I said, working out of Guy Bannister's office. I mean, the same time Lee Harvey Oswald is, and again, expert hypnotist. He's a Freemason. He's got all the hallmarks that you can point to. His father was he was like a part of the original OSS, Office of Strategic Services, and that's the father of the attorney who incorporates the Process, and the Process clearly had deep ties with the Manson murders. I mean, I believe that David Berkowitz is the most obvious example of a tie to that organization directly. But I couldn't believe that members of the Process and their Massachusetts headquarters went and visited Prosecutor Bugliosi, who I don't really trust him very much, but you can gather some things that are, legitimate pieces of information that kind of corroborate certain ideas that I had kind of circulating in my mind already. But to have him actually say that he's interrogating Manson about the Process, and then the Process finds out that he's asking questions about their organization, then sends two people in to go and meet with the prosecutor and assure him that the founder, Robert de Grimston Moore, never tied in with Charles Manson, was never connected with Charles Manson, never met him, and also that he's nonviolent, right? Robert de Grimston. And then the very next day, those exact same two people were on the visitors list to meet with Manson, and left that consultation with Manson with an article in Manson's own words that they put in their own magazine and published called Death. And that was the theme of the entire publication. And yeah, it just gets crazy because it gets so much more insane than that. Because I mean, Roy Cohn. I mean, at this point, most of us in these circles should know that name. And it's just like when you realize that there's even a connection to David Berkowitz in the process, to Roy Cohn and the sexual blackmail operation that he was running at the time. Like he admitted to Detective James Rothstein that he was running little boys for this network. And so Berkowitz himself told Maury Terry that the Process Church provided children for sex at parties held by wealthy people in not only Connecticut and the house of Roy Cohn in Connecticut, but also in Westchester, Manhattan, and Long Island, right? And so yeah, I just think that, and the people that were attending those parties, they're elites in the political establishment. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. You had like two aides to the mayor of New York City at the time were there, like judges, like it completely ridiculous. And it's fairly well memory hold because it took a little bit to find it, you know what I mean? And if you're not reading books like Maury Terry's The Ultimate Evil, or you're not reading even like people like Timothy Wiley, who's a former member, but you can't trust him that much, but he has some, revealing statements in that book that he wrote. And I think that it's important to at least tug on those threads, because at the very least, when you have somebody like Henry Lee Lucas, like, my God, right? Who's literally saying, once again, how many times have we heard it? I was programmed to kill. I mean, to say that straight up, I mean, I've just seen it too often. And I mean, for the Bush brothers to commute the sentences of Otis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas, one in Florida, one in Texas, and that's the only time that George W. Bush ever commuted a stay of execution or whatever, and it's like, I mean, it's just unprecedented, right? Mm-hmm. How can they explain that? That's all I'm saying. Like,
it seems like whenever you find a group of kid fuckers, there's always weirdly a cult lurking in the background. It seems to be the case. Like, for those who have studied the Franklin scandal, there is little nuggets. Even in what's his face? We said him on the not too long ago, Nick Bryant. Even in his book, you see there are little nuggets in there, and he's clearly I wouldn't say he's a normie, but he's kind of like he was coming it from that angle, and he's like, what the fuck? And it is like there's still like occult shit, and like it is like it's hard to avoid. It's like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, anytime you have these elites that are fucking kids, there is this weird like occult shit lurking in the background. So it's like, what is going on here? What are the mechanisms in place? Why are these people so protected? It is insane. I mean, that has been like, I guess one of the things I've been super reeling on lately. I know me and you too, Austin, where it's just like, it's like, I guess maybe I consider this the veil. Like, this is the level of like where you get to the veil that we can't really see beyond, but it's like, I'm just so fucking interested. What the fuck is going on there? Why? It is like, once you get past that point, you're like, what is going on there? And it makes sense that like, this is like the initiation level where anyone who gets beyond there is like not going to talk about it, because it's like, obviously if you have any sort of inside knowledge at that point, you're fucking kids and killing people at that point. So it's like you're not going to fucking talk about it. So
exactly
right.
We have a big old blank spot there.
yeah. That's how you get in the club, is doing some unspeakable shit that you can never speak about, or else you get visited.
Right, hey man,
thrown off a building or thrown out of a helicopter or something.
Oh yeah, No doubt in my mind, but
yeah, it's what Newt Gingrich talked about with Trump when he said, I put this in the Octopus book. He said Trump had been elected, but he hadn't been inaugurated yet. And he said, Donald Trump's going to have a hard time in Washington, D.C. He's not part of the club. He's not a part of the secret societies. And I thought, well, he knows what he's talking about because he is. Newt Gingrich is a part of the secret societies, and he would know how it works.
Right.
And he would know that if you're not in that group, then you're going to be trying to force things in a way that it's like swimming upstream in Washington, D.C. This isn't how we normally do things. We use extortion about these scumbag pedophiles fucking kids, and we use that against them and leverage them into doing things they don't want to do. If you do it a different way, it's a huge problem for them.
Right. What are your thoughts?
That begs the question: do you really think Trump is not in these groups? Because
I don't think he's in all of them. I think the Venn diagram overlaps in some of the groups. He's definitely elite East Coast, New York, Manhattan group. He was a Democrat. Yeah. So he's part of that group. He knows all those people. They may profess to hate him now, but he knows them all. He's got mafia ties. He's got Israel ties. He's got all kinds of ties. I mean, he's in all kinds of things, but he's not in everything.
Yeah.
There is a certain group that he isn't a part of.
I don't know. After reading Whitney Webb's book, I'm very much like, I don't fucking know. There is so many ties. I think you brought up Roy Cohn. Isn't that like his big daddy, Roy Cohn?
Mentor. Yeah,
it's his mentor.
Attorney and for a long time.
And then there's rumors that Ghislaine, who's the one who set him up with his current wife, and I believe past girlfriends and such like that. And there's rumors that Epstein was literally. I mean, obviously we know of like the way it's framed by the mainstream media is almost like it was like, oh, these are like 16, 17-year-olds. Although obviously there were younger ones, but there were also, it seems like from reading that book, they were also grooming people to be like the ideal companions for elites. So they were almost creating, girlfriends, wives, whatever for the elites. That way they can kind of like, here you go, have this. And have fun with it, and like kind of like the perfect little elite that'll, perfect little wife, girlfriend, whatever for the elite that'll fit in perfect into your life that's already kind of fucked. And it's like, I don't know, I can't name off the top of my head, but it was astounding how many connections there was with Trump. So I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But it does feel like he's not, like, if you just like, if you haven't read these books, if you just pay attention from the outside looking in, it does feel like he's not in these places, but at the same time you're like, I don't know, when you actually start digging, you're like, he's connected with a lot of these people, and you're like, to what extent? I don't fucking know. Is he like being groomed to be almost like this perfect little like dark horse to come in later, almost like an Antichrist type character? I don't know. I'm torn.
Roy Cohn was running an Epstein like sexual blackmail entrapment operation. And it was known to the FBI. They used to party together. J. Edgar Hoover would show up to the parties that Roy Cohn would throw at the Plaza Hotel dressed as a woman. Like everybody knew. Like it wasn't. And you can read about that in Whitney's book too. Yeah, about those parties. It was like mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you're a cross-dressing tranny, and I'm running a sexual entrapment blackmail ring. Let's party, know. And that's the Roy Cohn, J. Edgar Hoover, FBI. So it's like when they're like the FBI is after Trump, the FBI is after Trump. The FBI, the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, was being blackmailed by Trump's attorney, Roy Cohn.
Right.
Okay. Of course, the FBI hates Trump, right? They have a long history. His guy was extorting their guy a long time ago. They all had. I mean, but again, Roy Cohn could have picked him up. J. Edgar Hoover makes 2 phone calls, and he could have had Roy Cohn picked up and put away for life if he wanted to, right? But there's always this. what do I do that for? That sets off a bomb that I can't necessarily control. So yeah, they're all in on it to an extent. I wonder, Newt didn't mention which secret society.
Yeah,
I
right.
wonder which one he was talking about specifically, because because of course Trump is part of this group. I mean, I think the hatred towards him is genuine. I think that the people like on MSNBC and CNN, I think they and The View. I don't think that's like some act. I think they genuinely. Robert De Niro isn't acting. He really hates Trump.
100%.
So like I believe all of that is authentic and real.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell what's real. I just assume for the most part, I just assume it's all a show.
Yeah. I feel like there's a story there that we don't know. Like that he was kind of, maybe for all I know, maybe he was, kind of somewhat in those circles, and maybe he did sniff out some bullshit and was not cool with it. And they're like, yo, this dude's not one of us. Something along those lines. I have no idea.
Maybe.
I'm very skeptical of, like, I honestly, like, really think about, like, in my opinion, I think he has more support than maybe ever at this moment right now. And I think it's a reaction to it. It just feels so much like he's serving a purpose to me. And
Hegelian dialect shit.
Brother. It really fits in perfect with that sort of, accelerationist theory that you speak of often, because again, it ties in with sort of a philosophical doctrine of some kind that really it is ushering in a totalitarian state, right? I mean, that's going to be the end result. But I'm just saying, like, in my opinion, it serves this sort of precedent-setting notion that they're able to. You see what they're doing with the Justice Department at this point. I mean, it's just like, it's reframing how many people, especially the more casual individuals who aren't as plugged in and aware of the veil of political theater that is deliberately, cast over our eyes. Right. But so it's like, it just feels to me like he serves this purpose of kind of escalating tension within, our own country to a certain degree.
At it.
Yeah, definitely. And again, don't get me wrong. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. The many of his policies I was against, but there were many that I actually approved of. There were some that I liked and appreciated much more than what the hell we're dealing with in this very moment. But it's still like, I'm philosophically opposed to the state, so I don't really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to get too much of a, too enthusiastic of support for any of these guys. But if they do something that happens to be in our favor, I will at least recognize it. Yeah, sure.
We'll point it out, but it won't make our dick jump. All right, guys, we're gonna transition over to the call-in portion of the show. I do want to remind you guys that today's episode is brought to you by Nadeau Shave Co. If you guys want a nice, smooth, shiny head like Charlie, this is the thing for you. Big Shave has been siding the American people for decades with their multi-blade razor scam. Get rid of that razor burn irritation and ingrown hair is caused by that deep, penetrating multi-blade cartridges. Go back to the traditional shave. You don't need expensive bullshit. They'll give you the stainless steel blades just like your granddad used to use. I'm telling you, guys, this is good stuff. I use this shit. I'm probably going to shave off this beard soon. It's getting a little fucking gross. Probably nick it off. But I do use it for edging, so that's something you can use it for here too. The standard issue includes one traditional safety razor and a box of 100 stainless steel razor blades. $75 allows you to shave for an entire year. Think about how expensive that bullshit like Fusion or whatever the hell you get is at the store, and think about how that'll last throughout the year. This is way cheaper. I'm telling you, it's way better. You'll get a way better shave. For those who shave on the daily too, you got the Quarter Shave Club. You guys can shave for about 25 cents each. NadeauShaveCo.com. Keep your eyes out. There's going to be some new shave, body, and hair soaps here coming here soon. NadeauShaveCo.com. Use Jose for 10% off your entire order. Let them know I send you. Support those, so support us. And yeah, let's get back to it. All right, guys, let's get into the call-in portion. Here we go, 941-281-5857. Those who want to call in, we'll talk to you. Keep in mind, I still haven't figured out the technical know-how of how we can all talk to each other. I think Charlie's peeing right now. Yeah, so keep in mind, for those who are calling in, you can talk to me, and that's it. Although the other guys can hear you, so they can hear your question, but you're not going to be able to talk to them. So keep that in mind. We're going to start going through the chat as well. Let's see what we got. All right, I guess this will be for me and Austin. I feel like by the time we're done answering it, we'll probably have other people coming in. Jose Galison, I know you mean me. They believe in Shaitan. Why do you not believe in a creator? Same for Charlie. I guess this has to lay out. When I said atheist, agnostic, I usually just say atheist. But most people are idiots, and they immediately means I assert there is no God. I just don't believe in a God, but I don't necessarily assert there. I wouldn't be surprised if there is one. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you define it. I just haven't personally found anything. I used to be really Christian. I grew up that way. I haven't really found anything that really like comports to what I believe, or that's really raised to the point of me being all like, I believe this. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be a Reddit atheist. I've gone through that one. I don't care what you guys believe. Honestly, believe what you want to believe. I guess I can do the Reddit atheist thing and kind of poke holes in Christianity if I want to. But at the end of the day, I just haven't really found anything, that a specific God claim that I've really found that rose to my belief of like, oh, this is legit. So, I do believe that they believe in some sort of entities or maybe actually, I don't even know if I necessarily believe in that. I would say that like maybe it's like a religion of power, and that it's not necessarily matters if they believe or not, it just matters that they do it. So that's just kind of where I'm coming from. So, to be clear, like agnostic just means I don't, assert there is or isn't a God. Agnostic or Gnostic is knowing. So if you're a Gnostic, you know. If you're agnostic, you don't know. So I don't necessarily know, but I am atheist in the sense that I don't believe. Theists are ones who believe. So I'm an agnostic atheist. But yeah, I don't know. I do find it interesting, that. Austin, I don't know if you want to answer that, and then we can, Charlie, I don't know where you're at with that, because that is something I do find interesting. Like, it is kind of like, you would think that, like, once you start thinking the elites believe in something, you're like, well, why don't you believe in God? I don't know. I just haven't really found a specific belief system that I'm like, yep, that's it. Or a specific God claim. I'm like, yep, that's right. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where you're at with that.
I'm still accepting applications.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
there is a creator.
I haven't picked one yet.
Yeah, I have like a lot of appreciation for, kind of like I read the Hindu scriptures, like the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, and but like I grew up Southern Baptist, in Northwest Arkansas. Like that's my upbringing in the church, and like as a kid, and my my grandpa was like the deacon of the Baptist church, and like we had like a family gospel quartet, even, like, so deeply bathed in the in sort of that theological doctrine in many ways, as far as this Southern flavor, and it's to me, it's interesting because I value, well, I'll be honest, I am like more spiritual than whatever that means than I've ever been in my life. And I know that sounds gay as hell when you say spiritual, but I'm just saying, like, I've honestly, I've heard, it's sort of this, and I think The Secret's absolutely ridiculous, but I do think that there is something to manifesting, and I think there's something to putting your energy in certain. It's just discipline, effort, putting in hard work. All of those must be included, but at the same time, and I believe natural talent comes into play, because we all seem to have different things that we're a little bit more preconditioned to succeed at. But at the same time, I'm only saying all of this because, like, I try and center myself every single day, and for really the first time in years, I'm basically praying every single day just to have my heart to be in the right place and my intentions to be pure, and for me to approach the things that we talk about with the best of intentions, like I said, and because I just think it's the only way to have anyone resonate with anything that you're saying. You have to be genuinely passionate about it, I think. But people can feel when you're being disingenuous. People can feel when you're inauthentic, and so anyway, I kind of steered away from the question, but in reality, I don't know. Like, I can't identify what God is. I mean, I don't know anyone that can, to be honest. Like,
feels that is drawn to hope. That's one way to understand spirit. The part of you that is drawn to hope. Everyone can relate to that. Right. The part of your spirit that is simply drawn.
I think he's making fun of you.
You making fun of me, bro? Adam, how dare you, dude? I thought we were close, man.
You did make a good point about authenticity, because it's like, I'm not gonna lie with my audience. It's very religious, so if I wanted to appeal to my audience, I would just lie and say I was religious. But it's like, I just can't lie to you. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know, Charlie. You have any thoughts on this? When it comes to your spirituality, whatever.
Smoked enough DMT to know that there's something going on.
That's what I'm saying, man.
There's something out there. I had a very simulation theory type experience. That's
nuts.
Profound and really.
That's what I used to say. You put a gun to my head, simulation theory is what I used to say, and honestly, I'm not entirely convinced that that's not the case. Right.
I mean,
but
and of course I had a head full of drugs. So like, whatever, you could sort of discount that, but I could see the grid. I could see it. And what was crazy about it was that when I got done and the guy I was with didn't do it, he was sitting with me, but he's a guy I'd known for a while, and we were like DMT partners over the years. And he didn't tell me anything about what to expect. And he said, at the very end, he said, "Did you see it?" And I said, "The grid." And he said, "Yeah." Wow. And I said, "Yeah, I saw it." And he said, "I don't know why, but for whatever reason, this batch, everybody sees the grid." I was like, fuck. Okay. And I mean, it was as clear as day.
Yeah.
I've heard that from, I've heard many accounts of that similar experience. I will attest to that.
And again, I don't even know that makes me one way, more so one way or more so the other way with regard to religion. It doesn't answer any questions at all. In fact, it creates more, like, holy shit. Okay. Well, like, what is God? Is God the guy that created this crazy ass video game that I'm in right now?
Right.
I mean, I guess technically that would be God, right? But then, so, I mean, it creates more questions really than it answers. So I'm not saying that, like, smoke DMT and you'll understand the universe. And you'll be 100 times more confused than you ever were. You just be like, okay, I don't know. I mean, geometric patterns and infinite love, and I feel like I got probed like by something that was like measuring me, not like probed that way, but Not that I would talk about it if I had. I didn't. but it was a very, very unusual experience. And after you have some of those, you just go, man, I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what I know it's not. It's not some asshole in a $3,000 suit standing up in front of 18,000 people in the Houston Compact Center preaching about the Lord. It's not that guy. I am positive that it is not him. No. And whatever he's selling, whatever salvation those guys are selling, the Joel Osteens of the world, that's artificial horseshit. Okay. I'm not going to dump on anybody's religion, but if you're believing that, that's religious junk food. Yeah. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah. All right. I have Alex who says, "Is there multiple levels to MK Ultra whereby first you have to brainwash someone to portray someone who should trust this person?" I think so. I think a good example of this would be Charles Manson. If you look at him, like he clearly was MK Ultra himself, and then went on to MK Ultra others. I guess we're using MK Ultra as a verb here. And then I think. And then I think if you look at like kind of just what we were talking about with like cults and stuff, and I like the idea. I think cults, if you just really look at them, you bring them down to their like base parts. They're just kind of trauma-based mind control, but I don't think all of them are intel related. But I do think it's kind of like it spawns out from there, and so it's kind of the idea that like it kind of just spreads. So once people find a methodology that works, it goes elsewhere. So it's kind of like, I guess you could look at it that way. I mean, maybe there's different ways to look at it, but I think there's something to that, and the idea that, obviously MK Ultra, I think later, went over to the cults, but I think it spread out from there, and I think people kind of just took that. I guess you could say in a certain sense it's probably all intel related, although I don't think all of it knows it is. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I just think it's mainly because of the timing that we keep pointing to. The same thing with Process when it grew to prominence, exact same time that it was forced underground because of the church committee hearings and MK Ultra going public. And when that happened, it's clear as day, in my opinion. And Congressman Leo Ryan's aide, William Halsinger, is one of my favorite sources for that. But as far as it was, MK Ultra was clearly driven underground into various occult groups, and it, to me, is the entire reason that the Satanic Panic occurred in the first place was because they were running all these different operations, and a lot of them had to do with sexual trafficking and different things of that nature. But yeah, I just thought on what you mentioned about Charlie though, like Charles Manson, when he was in prison. I can't remember if it was in county, like waiting to be. I can't remember the situation, but I know that he spent time around Danny Trejo. Have either of you heard of that story? He successfully hypnotizes Danny Trejo and a couple of his buddies, and he walks them through a trance where they all 100% believed, because they were all like recovering heroin addicts, or not recovering because they were just in prison and forced to recover basically if they couldn't get it. And so, but yeah, so he successfully led them through this trance where they 100%, Danny said he felt like he just took the best heroin of his life. And he said that Charlie Manson missed his calling. He in another life he should have been an expert hypnotist.
No way.
Yeah, that's so crazy, right? Like, what a ridiculous story. But
yeah,
I think James Holmes and stuff like that, like, so obvious that MK Ultra it never stopped either, like, as far as I'm concerned. And no way, right?
No, what are your thoughts on there's a bunch of stuff. I've got a great book called Project Cameleo. It's about this guy in San Diego who comes across this gear that's stolen from the El Toro Marine Base, and it winds up at his apartment, and then it immediately goes off somewhere else. But the feds think that he took it. He didn't take it. And he's a heroin addict who's coming off of heroin, and they don't believe him. They believe that he's got this gear, and the gear is like high tech night vision goggles and like a Department of Defense laptop. And they found like the car. It was like one of his buddies who went AWOL from the Marines and took all his shit and then like crashed at his house. And then they followed him there because they opened up this lap. It's a true story too. It's a true story. And the guy who's writing it is this guy's buddy that he grew up with, who's just happens to be a author, and wrote this story. And during it, it's like there's mind control stuff going on. When they start targeting him and start really fucking with him. One of the things they do to make him feel like he's going insane is they start making the size of his apartment much smaller than it actually is. So he feels like he's in a much smaller place. And then he'll leave and go out and do something. He'll come home and then he'll feel like his place is twice as big. And then he'll look outside of the window and they'll have changed it. So he's not looking outside at the window. He's looking outside and there's 3 suns out there. And you're just like, that's the book. Yep. And I heard Robert Guffey on with Greg Carlwood years ago.
Greg.
And I bought the book immediately. And it is a crazy ass story. I mean, if you want to get into like invisible midgets wearing like predator capes, you know,
I'm in.
You know, the predator like mirrored cape where you can't see anything, everything's reflective. They had midgets that were in this guy's apartment. I mean, the whole thing.
Oh my god, dude. That is crazy as hell.
It reminds me,
and it's true, and it's not from like a million years ago either. It's from like 2007.
Jesus,
when it took place.
Oh my god!
It reminds me of this case with like UFO stuff. I wish I could remember the specific names. Maybe Adam will remember it. But there was this guy that like I believe it was actually 2 feds essentially were their whole thing was like disinfo in the UFO like community, and they just drove this fucking dude nuts. They just like completely like did all these like weird hoaxes like UFO stuff, and just to fuck with him, they seeded him this false information and all sorts of shit just to fucking drive him insane. Let me see. Paul Benowitz and Richard Doty. There you go. See, I knew Adam would know it.
Yeah.
That's why we're the producer. But yeah, that they fucking just drove this dude fucking nuts just to disinfo the UFO community and just to fuck with this guy essentially. It was pretty good stuff. But Charlie, do you have any thoughts with the question? The question was, do you think there's like multiple levels to MK Ultra? And the example was like, they used was essentially like you have to essentially an MK Ultra individual has to essentially screw over someone else type deal or something like that. I forget the specifics, but I guess you can kind of take that any way you want if there's multiple.
Yeah, I don't know.
To it.
I don't know if there's like a criteria for like moving up the ladder, so to speak. I think there's definitely layers to how much they screw with you, for sure. How much and how they screw with you, and in the duration and the methods. Is it subtle? Is it overt? Are they using drugs on you? I mean, are they just holding you down and scrambling your brain like Clockwork Orange style, or is it more subtle? Is it voice to skull technology? Are they really starting to make you feel like you're having these thoughts organically, or is it more medically induced? I mean, I think that it just sort of depends on what the technology is now, but the overall concept of mind control as a control apparatus, I think that takes on a variety of forms. I mean, I think that we're under mind control just with the propaganda we get from the media, right? And the Smith Modernization Act of 2012, which legalized propaganda inside America to be used on Americans. So, I mean, isn't that just a form of mind control as well? And it's just so it's a sliding scale. It's what is consumer accepted mind control, like commercials or political ads or whatever. I mean, this is like legalized mind control. It's like normalized and it's acceptable. 100%. And not frowned upon as much, right? But like, where does it cross the line? Obviously, holding somebody down, giving them electric shocks and filling their head with LSD is crossing the line. But where is the other line? How much of it is manipulation? What about the mind control that you can't quantify, like peer pressure? social manipulation, gender targeting, and climate guilt and climate hysteria and all these things that are slowly, incrementally building up and turning your mind into mush and making you feel a certain way about a certain thing. Drip, 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 drip. It doesn't always happen like some guy holds you down and zaps you. It's more subtle than that and more effective, frankly, because I think the key component that they learned during MK Ultra was all these people know that they're getting fucked with, and that is going to be a problem. But what if they didn't know?
Exactly.
What if they didn't know they were getting fucked with? What if they were getting fucked, but they just didn't? They were the last to figure it out. Then it would be so much more effective because we wouldn't have this layer of like, I know that I just got programmed, or I know that I don't feel normal or whatever. What if you made it so that they thought they were having the original thoughts? And then of course now you drag in Edward Bernays and this whole Tavistock where we started. I mean, it's all mind control. It's just a matter of degree.
Yeah. Oh, well put. My God, brother. That reminded me, by the way, of I just think that he brought that up. I think like he put that comment in like the context of it. I think it was right at the time that I mentioned Tamerlane and the potential MK Ultra connection there. And he was, I think he was kind of questioning, I'm not entirely sure, but I think he was kind of questioning why would his own uncle Ruslan throw him under the bus like that. And I think that not very many people are aware of. It's hard to interpret familial dynamics as far as that's concerned. But I will say that, I mean, the family had a falling out with Ruslan, prior to all of this, and so to me it seemed like he was much more loyal to his intelligence connections and how well established he was as far as his business was concerned, and I don't think he was very as far as like emotionally attached to that family. Like I really don't think that was the familial dynamic, but yeah, I think that as far as MK Ultra is concerned, like there are clearly, I mean, so many degrees as far as like, you remember what I said about Dr. Robert Duncan and how, right, he was basically claiming that, they could use all these different behavioral modification techniques that included brain implants, but they weren't even necessary and they didn't even work that well. And they more relied on post-hypnotic suggestion so I think that that they've kind of perfected it in many ways, right? And I think that LSD wasn't even one of their most successful, pharmaceuticals within, their test results and their experimentation, which I also
unpredictable. But whatever they had Britney Spears on, or whatever they had Serena Williams on, where they're snapping in between personalities that have different that have different accents and this and that. You go, okay, well, if I can move you from one to another, the fact that there is another is alarming. But if and there's usually more than two, right? Multiple. And if you're the person that knows how to move them from one into another, like the Harley Pasternaks of the world, or whoever else is doing this social engineering, that becomes a very valuable skill for getting the car back on the tracks, right? So I would imagine that would be the type of guy that would come out of linguistics, intelligence, definitely, security state type people with a background in psychology and game theory and all that shit, all the stuff that Epstein was interested in.
Exactly, man.
On the familial dynamics you were talking about, I do think there is something to be said about that, in that I think it's my suspicion that maybe, just maybe, like say for example, with individuals like Ghislaine or even Epstein, I think maybe there's a level of sympathy that maybe people like us should have. And I think that there might be some dynamic when it comes to these people with generational trauma, I guess you could say, to where I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they inundate their kids into this, whatever the fuck this is, at a young age, and they deal with some fucked up shit, and they have to accommodate with that. And then, like, Ghislaine's probably a better example than Epstein, because I think Epstein's background's a little bit fuzzy, although he has a brother who was, like, very much involved in this shit, too. So I think that kind of hints towards some sort of familial dynamic. But obviously with Ghislaine, it's far more strong when it comes to her father. Well, fuck, I can't even think of his fucking first name right now, but what's his name? Fucking Austin.
Robert Maxwell.
Robert Maxwell. There we go. But yeah, so obviously I think there's something to that in that they
there's intergenerational trauma.
Yep.
No doubt about it. 100%. That is par for the course. That's not just politic family. That's a lot of these wealthy fucks.
Exactly.
These crazy intergenerational Vanderbilt families. There's I think you make a good point. I mean, it's hard to have sympathy for somebody like Ghislaine Maxwell. However, like you said, didn't exactly grow up with a normal upbringing.
Okay.
Definitely a lot of childhood trauma and some social conditioning issues going on there. And listen, that's a great way to break people early, is to condition them, make them experience horrific sexual trauma. It splinters their mind and makes them much different than they would be normally. And that is valuable to some of these people, and they tend to do that. So
100%.
It's a weird thing. It's not something that necessarily you would want to think about, but you also have to kind of understand it if you want to get the full picture of like what's going on here. It's like they didn't just wake up and become like bad people. They were this is part of the family tradition. Bad people. So
definitely. Yeah, and I mean that just like that reminds me that David Ferry, when he was hypnotizing all the cadets in the Civil Air Patrol. Just Lee Harvey Oswald was one of them who they claimed like he clearly he sexually assaulted him when he was a member of the CAP, but he was 100% hypnotizing them. And whenever they found all these like books on incantations and all these books on hypnotism and everything, and I forget the details, but he was flaunting it. He was very proud of his abilities, right? And he would like have parties, and they would hypnotize these he would hypnotize the young boys in the CAP and the Louisiana CAP, and then they would sexually abuse them, and like then they would come out of the trance, and they wouldn't even know what had happened, and many of them would engage in the sex like almost like consensually when they're in the trance, right? Which is like insane to imagine, but you're basically, I would imagine you're just going off of like physical reaction. I don't even know. I can't really understand it as far as the psychological aspect of how it's working, but I think
you disassociate in some ways, and I think that's part of what I think that's part of what they need is they need you to disassociate. Because then, if you do that, if you have to mentally go to another place because what's happening to you in the current place is so unspeakable that you can't even process it, then you break that person
100%.
And then it's however you choose to rebuild them that matters. Right?
Brother,
if you're some crazy, lunatic CIA operative who's Robert Maxwell, who's a spy for multiple countries, your upbringing is going to be a hell of a lot different because you're not going to be working the drive-through at Wendy's.
Right.
There's a different plan for you. And Ghislaine Maxwell is one of many sisters, by the way, that they're all in intelligence in some form or fashion, working for the Israelis, working in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, deep tied in with what happened with Danny Castellero on the octopus situation as far as the Inslaw, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's crazy to me. Just hawking the bugged promise, but I mean, I don't know. Of course that's how these families operate. I remember hearing I forget which Epstein victim it was. I think it was either Maria Farmer. I can't remember now, but uh she claimed that one of the Epstein victims that was at the New York property. I'm pretty sure it might have been the Florida state. I can't remember now, but I remember that Ghislaine was with her when she was at the Epstein's property, and she was kind of flaunting these ancient relics and things of that nature, and even like I forget exactly what the ancient relic was that she showed to this Epstein victim, but it was pretty much like my father just took this because he could, right? And like it was just like, to me, like, this is sort of, the mentality when you run in these circles, right? And I mean, I think that Maxwell was kind of at least Robert Maxwell, when he got offed by, it seems like, a faction of Mossad, and I mean, I think that he was basically trying to leverage, and he was in all this debt, right? Yeah,
he wanted more money. Yeah, he wanted to renegotiate his terms.
Exactly, and they're like, man,
they said, no, we're good. We're going to throw you off this boat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shoot you with the heart attack gun a couple times and throw you out.
I heard John Perkins on your show for the first time, and that directed me immediately to Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and I just first, I want to thank you for that, because that was like, it once again, it was a huge factor, and in another of my major steps toward removing the veil, and that really does serve as a template for how this system, like David Icke says, the tiptoe toward totalitarianism, right? I mean, it's literally how it functions. You can just point to, I think I might have even said this last week, you can point to the Belarus, the leader of Belarus, claiming that the World Bank, the IMF, they're threatening him. First, they bribed him, attempted to bribe him. And then when he refused the bribe and went public with they threatened him. And then all of a sudden a coup comes across the border, and he has to rely on Putin a little bit more. And that's just,
you don't want to get on an airplane next to that gentleman.
Yeah, right.
Because Perkins writes, in a 3-month period in 1981, 2 of his guys got blown up in airplanes. Two of John Perkins' guys that he said, you're going to have to take the deal, and the deal is the silver or the lead. These are your 2 choices. And these guys said, well, listen, we're not doing that. I'm not doing it to my country. I'm not doing it to my people. And John said, they're going to get you. And they said, well, we know. And they were dead. They were both dead in 3 months. So, I mean, that's reality. This idea that bankers are just like these nerdy guys, or they talk about numbers and it's really boring. Those guys are super dangerous. The bankers are the IMF and the World Bank and the Bank of International Settlements. These are terrorist organizations.
Yes.
It's just financial terrorism. It's just a different form of it. It's it's the equivalent. I mean, what John Perkins was talking about was the equivalent of them, like a loan shark showing up at your door, going like with a baseball bat, going, you fell behind. You, Ecuador, fell behind on your payment. You owe us a bunch of money. Like, what are we going to do? Like, privatize your lumber industry and sell it to our buddies at Goldman Sachs, or vote our way in a UN resolution, or allow the U.S. to put a military base here, or something. You got to do something, because you owe us a bunch of money that we just invented out of thin air for this for this hydroelectric power plant deal, which we knew was going to bankrupt you. That's the reason why we offered it to you. And so when you read that, and I'm reading this, I'm like, holy shit, debt as a weapon. I don't know why I had never considered this, right? And I'm reading this in 2007. And John Perkins, that book changed my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad you saw the interview with him. I've had him on twice. He just opened me up to the idea that it's when you get the banks involved, you can really enslave humanity. And you can enslave countries, and the epiphany that I had when I was reading this book had to do with the moment in time where I was in my life, which was living in Las Vegas and working in new home sales and selling homes into the hottest market in the world,
Right.
second only to Dubai, and giving a 90-year-old man a 30-year loan, and then saying to the loan officer, what are we doing here?
You're right.
He goes, well, we're going to package it up and sell it off to Wall Street tomorrow. We're never going to sit on it. Wow. You go, he's not going to make it in 30 years. They go, it's not our problem. I was like, oh, interesting. Not our problem. I just assumed you guys made these loans and then you serviced it. No. We sell them to Wall Street. They get pooled into mortgage-backed securities. I'm watching this whole thing just going and still not understanding the scam. Right. So that's another thing is that, like, when I talk to people, or I mean, with you guys do too, it's like sometimes it just clicks and it takes time, and you have to be in the right scenario, in the right situation. You see something, you go, I get it now. I understand what's happening. This changes everything. And for me, that light bulb moment was John Perkins' book. And I just never could go back to seeing the world the same way, because I was like, we are loaning people money on a smaller scale here at the home builder I'm working for, and they're gonna default on this because this guy has no business buying this house. And then they're gonna take back a tangible. They're gonna take back this guy's house. And I was like, oh God, I can't be a part of it. It finally hit that's what was going on. So again, I mean, for some people, COVID is that.
Yeah.
Where it just finally woke them up. But
all right, Evan Carl, he says, off topic, but I missed it when you spoke about the Franklin scandal. I've always wondered where Larry King is now. What do you guys know about his history after Franklin? I do want to point out, for a very long time, I was a retard, and I thought Larry King was literally Larry King, Larry King Live. No, it's a different political figure. But I do think
and he was black.
Yeah, he's a black guy.
Yeah,
he's a black dude.
Actually,
I do think there's a somewhat moral to the story, because with his history after Franklin, basically Nick Bryant has just been following him along after his history after Franklin, and just been calling all these different organizations that Larry King keeps trying to get involved with, all tending to be kids-related organizations that he tries to get involved with, and Nick essentially keeps calling them, being like, hey, you have this guy, right? This guy, and he's got him kicked out of a bunch of them. I can't remember the one he's currently at. At least the last time I heard Nick talk about it, I do vaguely recall he was involved in some sort of, I don't know if it was a school or what, or some sort of singing thing or some shit. But
yeah, they were going to like take kids on like field trips or something.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
No, you are not. You're not taking it anywhere. No, you are not.
Adam, our producer, says there was a child's opera program, I think is what he said.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So,
That's hilarious.
It's
terrible.
So I do think there's a moral to the story there, and the fact that, like, this is kind of what happens to these people. Yeah, unless you have someone who's like fervently like tracking these motherfuckers down over and over and over and over again. It's kind of like they're gonna keep fucking doing it. So I mean,
you have to stay vigilant, make sure that some guy isn't. I mean, you have to anyway. Just with the public school system, and you just take a look at one of those teachers, and you're like, you've got to be on a bunch of lists.
Oh God.
No way you should be teaching children.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just realized we got the graphic. We got the thing that's first time I've seen a graphic content watching. Had to confirm to play. Fuck YouTube. All right, cool. We got one of those ones. I thought I thought the view count was a little bit low. I was like, this seems weird with Charlie on, but yeah, it sounds like we got that old fucking Banhammer from not Banhammer, but the old.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't have a YouTube channel anymore for a reason, and yeah, maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it was. I don't know. Right. I hope it wasn't. It could have been just the. I mean, we have been talking about some crazy shit.
That's true. I don't give a fuck. I talk normally on YouTube. I don't give a shit.
And the algorithm is looking at it going.
Red flag all over the place.
Yeah. What you doing, baby?
What are you guys talking about over there? You guys we have to close the door. So whatever you guys are talking about in that room, we're just going to close the door.
Right. All right. Well, I think we're at a good point. I think we're going to close out. Charlie, you want to let people know where they can find you at?
Yeah. Macroaggressions.io is the best place to find me. And the audiobook is out. The Octopus of Global Control is now out in audio format. So I'm encouraging people to, I don't know, if you're going on a trip, you're driving somewhere, you're going to the gym, give you 23 hours of a sweet ass Canadian accent. I will tell you that right now. Graham Dunlop from Grimerica did the voice. Big thanks to him. And so, yeah, check it out.
That's awesome. Austin.
All right. Yeah. Well, you can find me at the Underclass podcast. You can support me on Patreon or Buzzsprout. I'll be sending the StreamYard links to my patrons starting next week. So that'll definitely be a part of the, the incentive. And also, maybe by my next solo episode, for my paying members, my patrons, they might get it a week prior to it going public as well. I think that's probably the best model for me at this point. But anyway, you can find me at the Underclass podcast on basically all audio streaming platforms. And other than that, Charlie, thank you so much for
having
coming
me, guys.
brother. Like, this was surreal, honestly. Like, I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am. Your intro is one of my favorites.
My intro is fucking awesome.
I love it. Bro.
I agree. I came up with the idea for it, but then when they put it together, actually the first run with that intro, it was like smooth jazz. I was like, can we do something like a little bit more, I don't know, like upbeat? And right. The second run, I was like,
perfect.
Just leave it the way it is.
I think it's
plenty angry. And I figure, if you listen to that intro, it's like 2 minutes long. If you listen to it, you're going to know whether you're interested in this,
right?
What I'm selling or not, because you're going to be like, no, thank you.
You speak my language, brother.
Or you're going to say, yeah, okay, I can get down with what this guy's talking about.
Right.
Like he's had enough.
I'll leave it with, since we were talking about John Perkins and since you introduced him to me, I think it's important. We should at least say that, at least mention what John Perkins so poignantly wrote, right? And he says, highly paid professionals who cheat countries around the globe out of trillions of dollars. They funnel money from the World Bank, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and other foreign aid organizations into the coffers of huge corporations and the pockets of a few wealthy families who control the planet's natural resources. Their tools include fraudulent financial reports, rigged elections, payoffs, extortion, sex, and murder. They play a game as old as empire, but one that has taken on new and terrifying dimensions during this time of globalization. I should know. I was an economic hitman. I just think it's so great.
It's so great, man.
Right.
Check this out. From me reading that book and it changing my life to the last time I talked to him, he's like, you should come to the Amazon with me. I was like, okay. I should definitely come to the Amazon with you. I'm like, how am I going to get to the Amazon?
Yeah, I'm not going
to. I do a tour like outside of Peru. And he's like, in Peru in this area. And we go in and it's like 10 days. I was like, Fuck, man, I gotta find a way to make that happen. Like somehow, you know what I mean? Like if he asks, you kind of gotta go, right? So
that would be so crazy.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. One last question: is a Libertarian presidential candidate a Fed, fag, or both? Fed is to be determined. Fag, as in the good words of Reed, or I guess a paraphrasing of Reed. I don't care that he's gay, but he's definitely a faggot. So yes, he's definitely faggot. To be determined on the Fed front. But if you guys want to support me, patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. You get all of my stuff except for these Already Deads a week early. For the Already Deads, as Austin's about to start doing here soon, you should support him as well. You'll be able to get the StreamYard link where you guys can pop in and you can be one of the talking heads on here to ask questions or just talk to us depending on whether we have a guest or not. And I do want to give a shout out to my sponsors. It's the highest level of my Patreon. I shout them out every episode. I also have my co-host Toad on Tower Gang at Tower Gang Toad. He should have been the fucking president. But you guys let us down, and for that, the Libertarian Party is unfit to exist. Then also at Abrogate D's, at ZOVERACK, then at _Infinite Zeal, then Jacob Daniel, the Biblical Anarchy Podcast, at Biblical Anarchy, then Tim Tuttle at Jolly Allen Klebold, then my buddy Will Bell, who makes this delicious rabbit eye wine. I'm like on the fence whether I should recommend it or not, because if you get too many, you'll drink it. You'll drink the whole bottle as soon as you get it. It's fucking delicious.
That's a good recommendation, actually.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, I say that because it's like he sent me like a fucking case whenever he started supporting this, and I fucking drank it all in like probably a week.
That's a fantastic endorsement, actually.
I was way too fucked up for a while, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I like this. It's too good. But yeah, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good shit. Bump it up in the algos. And with that, we are out of here. Appreciate you, Charlie, for coming on with us.
Definitely, brother.
We are out.